Hello, everyone. Good evening. We are so glad you guys chose to tune in with us to another edition of High Street Youth Live. We're super excited to be here with you guys again this week. We have a great word coming from Pastor Tom, and we have some fun stuff planned for this evening. But before we move on, I just want to remind you of a couple things. We have a few places we want to connect with you. And so those are mainly social media right now, as well as YouTube. So make sure that you like our Facebook page. Make sure you go to our Instagram page and drop a like. Also, make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. All of the content we produce is getting uploaded to our YouTube, so make sure to get that subscribe dropped and that like so that we can stay connected as much as possible. We have some new things coming at Wednesday, Thursday at midnight, and on Sundays, so make sure to stay posted there. But as well as that, we have a new challenge that's coming at you from Pastor Eddie, and this is a church-wide thing. All of High Street Church is doing this together, and it's called #JesusChangedMyLife. So the idea behind this is because things are different this Easter than they typically are, we're challenging everyone in the church to take a 1-minute video of themselves speaking on their phone and telling about how Jesus changed their life. It's that simple. We want you to share that on your social media. So whatever social media you're on, post it there so that people can hear about what Jesus has done for you. We want to reach out to as many people as we can this Easter, and we think that that is one of the most effective ways we can do it in this time of social distancing. So challenge you to check out our Instagram, our Facebook, our YouTube, and the #JesusChangedMyLife challenge.
Guys, we also want you to join us in our VDNA groups. Those are this Sunday and every Sunday after this one at 5 p.m. And guys, I want you to join us this Sunday at 5 p.m. for our VDNA groups. We have those on Sunday nights every Sunday, and we just get together and get to connect, even in this social distancing. And right now, we just want to thank you guys for joining us on our videos, our pages, and just commenting. We love to stay connected with you guys, and we just want to continue that through this time.
So thank you again for joining us, and get ready because we have a great game coming at you from Elvis. Stay tuned.
Welcome. How you guys doing today? Listen, it is time for some social distancing games. And the beautiful thing is, this is a very timely thing to do tonight because the name of this game is called Skittle Distancing. All right, you guys ready for this? Listen, the name of the game is Skittles. Whomst among you has tasted the rainbow before? If you have, raise your hand. Drop one in the comments. All right, but listen, Skittles got many colors to them. We got these. I didn't learn my colors growing up. So we got these colors in this packet, and we got several packets. We got several contestants. The name of the game is you dump the skits and you separate them into several different glasses, right? Clear so that you can see the colors. The first one to separate their colors properly wins the game. Now, gentlemen, today we have the Thunder from Down Under. Kendrick, you have an Australian accent, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah! Kendrick Brown, everybody. Give it up, give it up. Yeah. And then, you know him, you love him, setting fire in the booth, Blaze Learman. Not Learman, Learman. All right? Listen, I believe in these guys, but I think Blaze is colorblind, so he's at a natural disadvantage. Let's see how round one is gonna go.
3, 2, 1, go.
Oh, we got some drops. Oh, dang, flying everywhere.
I'm feeling confident, not gonna lie. Oh boy, I got a brown. I know there's brown in
That's
here.
not brown.
All right.
What did I say? Brown? What did I say? Oh, this ain't even good.
Colorblind. I don't have a method or a system, if you can't tell. Oh.
Oh my. Oh my
What am I
goodness.
doing?
Oh
we
no.
lost valuable time on that. Oh boy.
Game!
Wow.
You messed up.
All right, the boys, for the boys, Blaze came in first. He battled his color blindness and came out on top, defeating Kendrick soundly. I don't think Kendrick even had half the bag done. But listen, the moment you've all been waiting for, we got another round for the girls. In this corner, you know her, you love her. She's married to the main man, Andrew, Kelsey Perez. Give it up, give it up, give it up. Now, in this corner, we got, in this corner, she's got 5 names. She's Emily Ann Jeanne Griffith. Give it up for Emily.
1, go.
Don't dump on the floor. Dump on
There
the
you
floor.
go. Oh, that's promising. Come on.
One hand on bag.
Look at that. Systematic.
Wow.
Fun fact, Emily wins every game of Battleship.
Oh, she's gonna have to pick that up.
She's got strategery.
Dude. There's way more reds now.
But judging by Kelsey's Instagram, color palettes are important. So I'm thinking she's got a good skill here.
Oh, that's a photo finish! Here's an instant replay.
Ladies and gentlemen, you may be wondering to yourself, why are there 3 people standing here right now? What's getting ready to happen? See, in something that has never happened before, circumstances that have never been seen, we are getting ready to have a 2v1 final round of Skittle distancing. Now, we believe in equality at High Street Youth. And so to keep things even, we gotta make sure that the girls are only able to use 1 hand each, Siamese twin style, you feel me? And they're gonna be able to separate each with 1 hand. Blaze is gonna use both. Let's get it on.
3, 2, 1, go.
We have a cheater. Oh boy. Oh boy. We need some assistance over there.
Blaze gets a plus of the penalty. Penalty on the girl. Non-stop.
Why?
They're stuck together.
We're our fault.
You gotta
I should
Blaze,
probably
come on.
finish one color.
You gotta-
Uh-oh.
Let's do it.
Oh, I have orange and 2 cups. I repeat. I have orange and 2 cups.
Oh boy.
I'm not as colorblind as it's making it seem.
Oh man.
I know what color I'm wearing.
Listen.
Done.
How's it feel, Blaze?
Defeat takes 4.
Oh.
Listen, you might as well be brisket because you just got smoked, baby.
It was an average
All you youthers out there, if you voted blue, I understand, but you just lost some money. You were wrong. If you voted pink, congratulations. Good for you. Dye some Easter eggs or something. Take yourself out on a date.
Imagine you can't see anything. No color, no sun or sunsets, no landscapes, no social media like you have, no driving, no video games. All you ever see is darkness. Today, we have many tools to help someone who has lost their sight. But imagine you lived 2,000 years ago. No braille, no computers to help you make so many things easier. If you were blind 2,000 years ago, society had little use for you. You could make a living begging, and those who were blind often did. And the amazing thing is, the law had a provision that if you were poor and you could not take care of yourself, begging was acceptable. And those who gave to those who were begging actually saw them as providing a service to society. So if you were a blind person, you provided a service to those who were responsible to help the poor. Now, in return, when they were given some money, what they would do is they would stand up and they would loudly proclaim your praises. This man or woman is so generous, and I ask God that he would bless them and take care of their family and give them many grandchildren and prosper their house, and they would continue like that for a while. But imagine being blind, no way to take care of yourself, and your lot in life is to sit by the side of the road, waiting for the generosity of people that may or may not come. I've seen blind people begging, and it's a sobering thing to realize that the only way they have to take care of their family is from the hopeful generosity they may get from people who acknowledge them and then give them some money. Our story tonight has a blind man in it, but he's not the hero. He's not our hero. Our hero is traveling. Our hero is headed to the capital city, and he's on a mission. He has his posse with him. He has 12 men who have been following him for a few years now. And our hero has done some amazing things. He's turned water into wine. He's raised people back to life. He's made those who were lame able to walk again. And he has given blind people their sight again. His followers are convinced that he is the one who will rescue the people of Israel from the oppression of Rome. They are convinced that he will be the king who will bring in a new kingdom. But this day, before they head back out onto the road because they are making their way to Jerusalem, he tells them that in just a few days, he is going to be mocked, insulted, spit on, flogged, and killed. Then he says, but it's all going to be okay because on the third day I will rise again. His followers were confused. They didn't get it. They had no idea what he was talking about. And we know because in Luke 18:34, this is exactly what they say. And this is the report they gave later when they talked about what happened that day. The disciples did not understand any of this. Its meaning was hidden from them, and they did not know what he was talking about. That's where our story starts. They had just heard what Jesus said about how he was going to be beaten and flogged and killed, but on the third day he would be raised to life again. So he's making his way to Jerusalem, and in order to get there, he has to travel through the city of Jericho. If you look at Jericho, it's a little ways away from where Jerusalem is, and it's about 800 feet below sea level, so it's kind of way down there. And when the Bible says, when the New Testament says they had to make their way up to Jerusalem, it's because Jerusalem actually sits 3,800 feet. That's 3,800 feet above sea level. So you have an elevation change of 4,600 feet. For those of you who know what a mile is, it's almost a mile. That's a good fur piece up the hill. Jericho was one of the larger cities in Israel, and it was a regional capital where a lot of people came to do business and do trade. And like always, there was a crowd of people who were following Jesus around. And as he comes into the city of Jericho, the leaders are there with a crowd, bringing him into the city, welcoming him into the city. And this was common. Those leaders of the city would want a person who was honorable to be welcomed. They wanted to be seen well as city leaders. So they brought Jesus in and they welcomed him. And this crowd is noisy. And sitting on the side of the road is our blind man. And he hears the noise and he wonders, what's happening? He can't see anything, but he knows this isn't normal. Something is up. So he asks a few people, hey, what's going on? Who's that? Why is there so much noise? And one of them takes pity and they say, oh, it's Jesus of Nazareth is passing by. And the blind man had heard of this Jesus and how he had restored the lame and given people their sight. So immediately he stands up and he says, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. And the leaders of the crowd, because they're just trying to get Jesus into Jericho, they say, be quiet. Leave him alone. Don't bother him. And the crowd continues. But the man persists and he cries out even louder, almost to the point of being obnoxious. Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. And Jesus stops. And so does the crowd, because they're there for him. And he tells the crowd who has been stopping this man, bring him to me. So it takes a little bit of time, but they bring the blind man to Jesus. And when he comes near, Jesus looks at him and says, what do you want me to do for you? Now that seems like a silly question, but Jesus was testing his motive. And he said, Lord, I want to see. Immediately, Jesus says, receive your sight. And the man was able to see. Right after he was able to see, he starts following Jesus and he begins praising God. And when all the people saw it, they also began praising God. And I want to point out, in this scene, we have Jesus, we have the blind man, we have the leaders of the crowd, we have the crowd. And sometimes the crowd that's moving is not all of the people that are present. And if you've ever been to a parade, you know that's true. There's people that are hanging around that don't really care what's happening until something really big happens. But even the people who weren't a part of the crowd saw the man healed. And they began to praise God because of the work of Jesus. And if that's where our story stopped, it would be amazing. And it would be good. Blind man gets sight. Jesus brings praise to God. What a headline. But it doesn't stop there. Our story does not stop there. It continues because Jesus is not done. Our hero is not finished. He has a mission. And while he has stopped, he continues on his mission, headed to Jerusalem. And he must go through Jericho to do that. And the passage actually says that he's passing through. Remember, his goal is to get to Jerusalem because he has a purpose there. And he's headed to Jerusalem because he is about to die. And he begins walking. He's now walking through the city of Jericho, and he has no plans to stick around. But something happens that gets his attention. There's a man who lives in Jericho, and his name is Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus was a short man. Like, think Danny DeVito short. And he was a tax collector. Now, we don't like taxes today, but back then, the way taxes worked is the Romans would declare how much money needed to be collected from a certain area, and then they would delegate the job to somebody else. And that was Zacchaeus' job. He was a chief tax collector. He had under tax collectors. He had people under him who went around and collected taxes. The only one who knew how much money he was supposed to collect was Zacchaeus. He was a sellout to the Romans. As an Israelite to work as a tax collector, he was unclean. And actually, the law of Israel said a tax collector who worked for the enemy could be lied to. It was acceptable to lie to this man. So here's Zacchaeus, a tax collector who is wealthy, which means he was likely skimming money, taking more than he needed to, and he was getting rich off of the people. He wasn't a good man in the eyes of the people. And just the other day, I was watching, kind of as I wandered through the room, the old Robin Hood cartoon that Disney put out. And if you've ever watched that movie, the sheriff of Nottingham is not a good man. And Robin is dressed up as a beggar, and he's got a cup. And the sheriff pretends to put a coin in the cup, and he bounces it really high. And what happens is the coins that were in the cup and the coin that he put in there all came back. So he looked like he was helping this beggar, but he wasn't. He was stealing from him. That's the kind of man Zacchaeus was to these people. He was an oppressor. He was a bully. And he was short. If he had been respected, he would have been able to go through the crowd and see who Jesus was. But he wasn't. So he wants to see Jesus because he, like the blind man, has heard that Jesus is coming. And so he does something that no grown man then or now would do. He runs and he climbs a tree. And he climbs a tree ahead of where Jesus is about to pass by, and he waits. And Jesus and the leaders of the crowd and the crowd continue. And Jesus walks, and as he gets under the tree, he looks up and he says, Zacchaeus, come down right now. I'm going to your house today. Now, hospitality, then like now, dictates, requires that I invite you to my house. when I was a kid, my parents hated it when I would invite myself over to my best friend's house. They would tell me, that's not acceptable. You don't do that. Don't you do that again. But Jesus did that. That's exactly what he did. He looked at Zacchaeus and he said, you come down. I am going to your house today. And all of the people, the crowd, the leaders were watching, and they're, what is happening? We tried to get him to come to our house, and he said, no, I'm passing by. And he stops for this tax collector? So Jesus goes to the tax collector's house, to the sinner's house, and they begin to eat. And Zacchaeus, understanding the importance of what is happening right now, realizes that Jesus has just paid attention to him in a way that indicates that he cares about him. And he looks at Jesus and he stands up. And this is the crazy thing. He says, oh, I want to tell everybody. Oh, and by the way, the house setup would have allowed for people who were not a part of the household to watch what was happening. I've actually been in villages like this. You might be eating dinner and other people could watch what was happening. That's why so many of these stories where others are seeing what's going on happen that way. So Zacchaeus knows he has an audience and he realizes something big is happening. So he stands up and he says, I'm going to give half of my money to the poor. And everybody's like, you're going to what? And then he continues and he says, oh, and if I've cheated anybody, I'm going to pay him back 4 times. This exuberance over the fact that Jesus has paid attention to him is causing him to recognize his behavior for what it is. And he decides it's not about the money for me anymore. I'm going to get rid of the money. I'm going to pay people back. And I'm even going to go beyond what the law requires. Because if you read Leviticus, if somebody stole something or somebody took something that didn't belong to them and they discovered it, they were supposed to pay back plus 20%. In Leviticus, it's 20%. And Zacchaeus is saying, I'll give you back 4 times. So imagine he stole $1,000 for somebody. I'm going to give you $4,000 back. And the people are like, what is happening? Zacchaeus has been changed. The law of God said, if you want to honor him, you will care for the poor. And so he begins to care for the poor for the first time in his life. And what does Jesus say when Zacchaeus does this? Look in Luke 19, 9 through 10. Today, salvation has come to this house because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. Salvation? Son of Abraham? How can this be? This man is unclean. This man is a traitor to his own people. He's guilty of oppression. He's the bully. And Jesus is extending salvation to him and calling him a son of Abraham, a child of God? Zacchaeus didn't earn it, but Jesus brought salvation to his house that day. He also declared that Zacchaeus was a son of Abraham. That meant he was a child of God. The bully has found salvation. How? Why? Jesus said it, because he has come to seek and to save that which was lost. If you read carefully through the book of Luke, you will discover that Zacchaeus is the last person Jesus talked to before he went and was crucified, besides his own men. The last public encounter he had with anybody was this tax collector. And what did he do? He saved him. Now, why both stories? Because these men have a lot in common, more than you might realize. For both of them, Jesus is the hero. Both of them were in need, and both of them knew it. Both of them sought Jesus. They chased him down. The crowd was in the way for both of them, preventing these men from meeting Jesus. But Jesus stopped and paid attention to each of them. Both men received what was needed sight and salvation, and rescue and salvation. And the change for each of them was immediate and visible. It was apparent to all. The blind man was oppressed. He was picked on. He had lived his life hoping for a handout. To accept healing from Jesus meant that everything for him would change. That's why Jesus asked him, "What do you want?" Jesus knew more than anyone that everything would be different for that blind man from that day forward, because now he would have to work and he would have to earn a living. But the man was ready. Zacchaeus was the oppressor. He was the bully. He was the traitor. He was the one in the story that most of us would look at and think, he doesn't deserve Jesus. Aren't you glad that Jesus didn't see it that way? Zacchaeus knew he needed Jesus, just like the blind man. When Jesus saw him in that tree and told him to come down, Jesus changed his plans for this sinner so that this sinner could be saved. His plan had been to pass through Jericho. That's what he had declared. But his plans changed so he could rescue another person. When Jesus healed the blind man, people praised God. We all like it when the oppressed are rescued. When Jesus visited the tax collector, the people mumbled, "What is he doing eating with a sinner and a tax collector?" Because we think that the oppressor should be destroyed. Jesus changes the story for both and rescues both. Which of these do you sympathize with? Maybe it's the blind man. He had a hard life, and he deserves a break. The system is out to get him. Of course Jesus should rescue him. Maybe you sympathize with Zacchaeus. I mean, somebody has to be the tax collector, right? Why not him? Maybe it was the family business, and he just grew up in it, and he didn't know any better. It was just what you do. It was his dad's job, now it's his job. I mean, somebody's got to have the money. Why not be him? It's not his fault that the sub guys weren't so good, right? But we know that's not true from the story. And we also know that in our story, the hero for both of them is Jesus. Because remember how we started? He's on his way to Jerusalem, where he is about to be flogged, beaten, mocked, spit on, and killed. And yet he takes the time to stop for a blind man who needed salvation and sight, and for a rich man, a tax collector, a sinner, who needed salvation and forgiveness. And he rescues both of them. The crowd was more interested in their own concerns than anybody else around them. And that's still true today. We are often afraid of the crowd. What will my friends think? That's a struggle for kids, adults, really for everybody. We need to learn from the blind man and from Zacchaeus. Don't worry about what the crowd says. You look to Jesus. You seek the rescue that only he can bring, and he will bring the rescue. Even while on the road to his death, he stopped for these two men. Maybe today you're the blind man. Maybe you see, but life is a struggle every day for you. You have something that has kept you from living the life that God intends for you. Cry out to Jesus. He will heal you. His word promises that. He offers salvation and rescue. Maybe you're Zacchaeus, and you don't like the way that feels. Maybe you've been living life as an oppressor. Maybe you've been living life as the person who puts everybody around you down. And you needed to hear this message because you need to know that Jesus loves you too. You need to know that even though you don't deserve it, he loves you and wants to save you. You don't feel like you can go to anyone else because they won't understand. Or you've been rejected. Or you've put a personality out there that isn't real, but now you don't know how to get around it and say who you really are. This is what you need to do. Run ahead and climb the tree. Do something that's unlike what you would be expected to do. Do whatever it takes to see who Jesus really is. When Jesus tells you to come down, because he's going to your house today. Do what he says. Zacchaeus stood up and declared that because he knew what God expected. And so do you. And if you don't, go find out. Maybe today, one of your friends is the blind man or Zacchaeus. And you need to go share the message of Jesus with them. You need to pray for them and don't give up on them. Ask God to rescue them. Because remember that the rest of the story is this. Jesus did go to Jerusalem. It was just a few days later that he entered the city. He was taken captive. He was put on trial. And they did exactly what he promised at the beginning, what the prophets had foretold for centuries. And that is, they beat him, they mocked him, they spit on him, and they crucified him. But the beautiful thing is, that's not the end of the story. The end of the story is what he promised his followers that day, and they didn't understand it. And that was that on the third day, he would rise again, victorious over death. And that is what we will celebrate this Easter in just a few days.
Guys, we just heard an incredible word from Pastor Tom, and I just want to kind of double back and reinstate something that he talked about. Maybe you are tuning in today and you've never had your life changed by Jesus Christ. Maybe you've never had an encounter with him and you are still just kind of walking on your own way, doing your own thing. We are excited that you listened. We're excited you tuned in, but we want to help you take your next step in your faith walk with Jesus. So maybe you want to make a decision to follow Jesus, to make him the Lord and Savior of your life. We want you guys to know that you can still connect with us during this time. Drop a comment, drop a DM. Feel free to reach out to any of us leaders. We'll give you our phone numbers, our social media accounts, so we can talk to you about how we can do that. But it's as simple as this. Admit that you're a sinner. Believe that Jesus was God's son and that he did everything he said he did, and confess your faith in the Lord. That right there is what we call the ABCs of salvation. And if you want to do that, you can do that right now in your home. You don't have to be in a church building. You don't have to be with anyone. You can give your life to Jesus Christ. So if you want to do that, I encourage you, take this moment. Today is the day of salvation. And if you want a couple questions asked, you have a few things you want to know more about, please feel free to reach out to us. We're so thankful that you guys are here. If you did make a decision, please let us know. We want to be able to follow up with you. We have resources for you that we want to equip you with so that you can walk in a good way with Jesus Christ today. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We look forward to seeing you next time. I just want to challenge you to reach out to one another so that even in a time of social distancing, we are not really social distancing, we're just physical distancing. Thank you from everyone here at High Street.